Yo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new F1 2021 video where I am going to be sharing with you my best game settings for the game, which include the wheel settings, HUD settings, camera settings, audio settings, as well as graphic settings. Now here we are then, starting off with the wheel settings. You can change the vibration and force feedback over here, the calibration, as well as the control scheme. And with the control scheme, basically what it means is all of the different buttons that you could change. Now the only buttons I have changed is the overtake button, which I want to have on the right hand side. But all of these buttons are down to which wheel you use and your own preference as well. Now let me show you which settings I use in my Fanatec itself. I'll put it on the screen right now. I like to run with a little bit less drift so that the steering wheel feels a little bit stiffer, as well as I drive with 320 degrees of wheel rotation. Now what does that mean? I can show you right now. If you look at the camera, you can see what I'm doing right now is 320 degrees and the wheel will stop. So this means this is full wheel rotation whenever I'm turning the wheel at 320 degrees. So I don't need to turn the wheel all too much to be able to get full rotation in the game. Now 360 degrees is 1-to-1 in terms of what the in-game steering wheel does and what your steering wheel does. So if you want to have a 1-to-1 experience, you can go for 360 degrees. If you want to be able to turn just that little bit more quickly at a cost of being more accurate, then make sure you go and put it on 320 degrees. Try it out. It could help you a lot, but I recommend for beginners to use 360 degrees. Now going into the calibration, we have a couple of settings that we could change over here, and I only actually recommend to change something in here if you feel like something is not right. Now, for example, with the Fanatec CSL Elite brakes, what you can change over here is the brake dead zone. Now, if you are leaning onto the brake a little bit, then you want to be turning this up a little bit as well, because you do not want to be braking down the straight when you're not actually touching the wheel, and that sometimes happens with a couple of wheels. Now going into the vibration and force feedback, these are my settings which I like the most, but of course it does also matter what settings you have in your wheel itself as well, because I run a little bit more force feedback in my wheel, and then you can run a little bit less in the game, but you could also change it the other way around. But with these settings that I have, that I showed a little bit earlier, these are my settings. I have the force feedback on 60 in the first one, then 15, 10, 10, 10, so that you get feedback out of all of the compartments that you could get on the track, and then understeer enhance on off. What the understeer enhance does is it actually gives you a little bit of feedback when you start losing grip on the front tires, and I really do not like it, because when you start losing, your steering wheel suddenly starts losing force feedback, and it's just a really weird feeling. I recommend to keep your driving consistent to put that off. Now that we're done with the wheel settings, let's go ahead and get into the graphic settings, which is a lot of stuff to change. Actually, the gamma adjustment, I feel like this year the game has become a little bit more grayish, so I reckon I might be even putting the gamma adjustment a little bit up. Then the motion blur strength, I put it on 10. If you are experiencing a little bit of issues with your graphics card, just put it all the way down, because motion blur normally actually gives your GPU a little bit of a harder time to run. Now let's go over to the advanced setup. Now normally you want to get the most amount of FPS frames per second that your monitor supports, of course. So you do not really want to be at ultra high. If your PC can't handle it, you want to be trying to get the most amount of frames. So a couple of stuff that you actually can do to go and get rid of a couple of useless features is, for example, the particles. What the particles are is they are the raindrops as well as the dirt that gets onto your camera. You want to be turning it off, because if you have it on, it's only going to distract you and it will actually give you a worse vision. Then two settings that I recommend you put a little bit higher compared to everything else that you actually focus on trying to get or keep high is the lighting quality, as well as all the way down here, the texture streaming. If you put that one down, you will definitely see the game look worse as well. But apart from that, it's all to your imagination, and you want to try and keep yourselves at the maximum FPS that your monitor supports as well. Now let's go over to the video mode then, where you could actually change a couple of things that are going to influence the performance of the game. If you can, of course, try and run it in full screen or full screen borderless. This will actually require a little bit less performance on the graphics card. Now, you want to be, of course, putting in your aspect ratio, and do not use the VSync because it will actually give you a little bit of a delay. And in sim racing, you do not want a delay. Like just a millisecond will actually influence when you turn in, and you actually want to put that off if there is no issues with the game stuttering. Of course, the refresh rate you want to try and put as high as you can because this is the maximum amount that my monitor supports, but you'll have to find out for yourself as well. And I actually put a frame rate limit on as well, so that all of the extra performance I could use for streaming. So if you're a streamer, for example, try and put it on a frame rate limit so that you don't use extra resources which you don't have to use. Then for the anti-aliasing, this is just something that makes the game even more pretty. I put it on TAA and Fidelity Effect Sharpening, which makes the game even more crisp. Okay, next up, let's go to the HUD settings, or on-screen display. This is what you're going to be able to see while you're racing. Now, there's a lot of stuff that you can change in here. For example, the miles per hour or kilometers per hour. But a couple of things that are very important is the track map. You want to be putting the track map at full track map at all times. This way, you'll be able to see everybody out on track and anticipate on your rivals. A very important thing as well is your delta time, so that you're going to be able to see how quick you are through a lap, where you're gaining time, and you can analyze that and do it a little bit better in the next laps. Then you could also put on the proximity arrows. If you put that on, you will at all times have an arrow when another car gets close to you. This is very, very helpful when you are racing against each other. You do not really have to have them inside at all times. You can just keep your eyes straight and look at the proximity arrow. For example, going to the right or left, you'll be able to see where the enemies are going. And your awareness will definitely improve because of it. Then what you could do is you could go and put the virtual rear view mirror on. I normally don't put that on because I find it distracting having the rear view mirror on at all times. However, if you feel like multitasking is not really your best thing, then put it on because you can see at all times where people are behind you. You have a virtual rear view mirror all the way on the top of your screen. I personally don't like the distraction, but if you want to, you can. And then a very important thing as well, and it will really help you, normally it's actually disabled by default, is the permanent session timer for practice and qualifying. So at all times, if you put this on, you will know how much time there is in a practice session or qualifying session left, and not just in the last 5 minutes of the session. So definitely put this on. Now next up is the audio settings, and of course this is down to your own preference and your own audio mix, but I can give you a couple of tips. So there's a couple of new features actually in F1 2021 that you can change with the audio. For example, the engineer ducking. So what you can do is whenever the engineer comes on the radio, you can actually put all of the other sounds a little bit lower by default. You can put it on light, heavy, but I personally like it to be on light so that you have a little bit of a more clear understanding of what the engineer is saying, and then once he stops, the engine starts putting up the volume once again, but you don't actually hear it. Now in terms of the performance, you could put this on high or you could put this on ultra high, but as you can see, if you put it on ultra high, it could put a little bit of strain on your CPU load. If you don't think you have a B CPU, don't put it on ultra high for stability. Now I always like to put on the subtitles, but subtitles normally actually distract you while driving as well, because when Jeff comes onto the radio, the subtitles will come on as well, and you'll see it at the bottom of your screen. So in general, I would not actually recommend you to use the subtitles, but if you want to, make sure you do. Now let's go on to multiplayer with push to talk and mute by default, which I always put on straight away once I get into a new game. By default, these are off, and what that means is you'll hear everybody once you get into a multiplayer lobby, as well as they'll hear you by default as well. So what you can do is you can put the push to talk on, and then you will not always have an open microphone. With the mute by default on as well, you can you'll never be able to hear other people screaming, or if you want to, of course you can put that on off and you'll hear everybody screaming and yelling at you when you crash the mountain. Then with the broadcast experience, this is actually something that could be of an assist to you as well, which I currently have off, but it could be of help once you start learning the upshifts. So for example, the upshift tone, I have it on off, but you could put it on and then there'll be a little bit of a beep once you have to gear up in the game itself. So it could help you to get up to speed with gear shifting. And a cool addition as well to F1 2021 is the driver's helmet mix. Once you're in the cockpit cam and you're in the driver's helmet, you'll actually hear a little bit more of a muffled sound. I personally really like it. It's a new feature. You should try it out, see if you like it as well. It's really realistic, but it doesn't really add all too much to the actual performance and gameplay. And over here as well with the radio, a tip for you is to go and put your radio output device on your microphone. Don't leave it on auto, put it on your microphone, because what you can do then is if you put on the radio button in the game itself, you can talk to your engineer and he will actually pick up what you're saying, and Jeff the engineer will actually give a reply accordingly. Box this lap, box this lap.
Okay, we can take you this lap.
Session update.
Here's the top 5 cars as things stand. Leclerc, Ricciardo, Norris, Vettel and Latifi. Currently, the fastest lap is a 1 minute 30.1.
Now here we are then in the camera customization. Now this is actually the camera settings that I have for F1 2021 in the TV pod cam, which I normally use and most people actually use out there as well. In general, you do not want this field of view to be zoomed out all too much like you're seeing right now. You want it to be zoomed in. But find a sweet spot, don't go all the way out. Try and find a sweet spot here. My sweet spot that I found is -10 with all these settings like this as well. Now one more thing with the camera settings is the camera shake and movement. I always recommend putting it to 0 because that could actually distract you a lot as well. When you brake, the camera moves or shakes when you go over curbs and all that good stuff. You want to put it on 0. So these two settings all the way at the bottom, you want to put them on 0. Otherwise, it's going to distract you a lot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these were my settings for the F1 2021 game. Now, let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below and I'll help you out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you go and like it. If you haven't subscribed, do it as well. Got plenty more content coming in the future. And make sure if you have not yet, follow my Twitch as well, because I'm live over there playing F1 2021 almost every single day. For now though, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.